The Nissan Z is dying icon. Let's talk about it. If you're new to the channel, I openly discuss topics that might be controversial about cars, and you might not like what I have to say. I'm gonna keep it real. So if you like the content, definitely subscribe and like for more, and check out some of my other videos. You might like what you see. Now, back to the main point. Let's talk about sales numbers, right? It's been fairly viral recently that the Supra has officially been outpaced by the Nissan Z for 2024 in total sales. So, as I'm looking here, it shows 484 Supras made their way in with new owners in 2024, and 671 Zs have found new owners for 2024. So, both are terribly low numbers. What? However, it still outpaced the Supra. Now, let's talk about the reality of the Z, and the fact of the matter is, it was once an icon that continued the legendary Z nameplate for Nissan. Wow! But now, it's almost not even identifiable as a car that exists. I can't remember the last time that I've even seen a Z on the road, and that's including Caffeine and Octane here in the Atlanta area. Wow! What's going on and why is it dying? I've compiled my reasons for why I personally feel like the Z is dying and sales are dwindling, and I even think that there's a chance that this thing will be killed off in the next few years, if not sooner. What? The first thing is probably my biggest reason, and I just don't think they tried hard enough for the 400Z. It was a carryover model from the 370. They stuffed the twin turbo V6 from their Infinity brand into it, which I get it. It's a stout engine, makes 400 horsepower, maybe a little bit more in the Nismo version, but ultimately the build quality didn't really go too much higher. What? The price definitely did. Ew. The driving experience is probably still stellar, but it doesn't feel too far different from the 370Z. Now, that whole idea gets transferred to the rest of my reasons, right? With the 400Z out, top trim like a Nismo, you're looking at 60 grand plus for that thing. What? And it's not even it's not a car that even really, it's not a performance value by any stretch of the imagination. So that begs the question of what do you get for the value? Because now you're getting a car that in reality, when you sit in it, you're going to feel like you're just in a dressed up version of a 370. And that car is a decade and a half old. So do you want to spend 60 grand on a car that's a decade and a half old? Now, on the fact of value, the performance aspect, it's got a twin turbo V6. Good for 400 horsepower. I think it's in the realm of 350 to 370 foot-pounds of torque. Fun ride, no doubt. You can get a 6-speed manual, or you can get, I believe it's a 9-speed automatic. However, one big issue, and I think Nissan thoroughly screwed up on this by alienating their target audience, is on the Nismo variant, they didn't have the option for a manual transmission, and that is just nuts to me. The Z has always been, the enthusiast grand tourer. If you want a car that can carve canyons, go through mountain roads, but if you want to take it on a weekend trip, on a long drive, it's still comfortable, a jack of all trades kind of car, and they've, offered a Nismo variant, you would expect that they would want to cater to the enthusiast crowd and give you the transmission that an enthusiast would want, but unfortunately they didn't. And I think that really shot themselves in the foot because sure, manuals are a very small percentage, but even Supra sales, majority of those this past year were manual transmissions, so that just goes to show how much people value it. Me personally, if you gave me one or the other for free today, I would choose a manual transmission Nismo 400Z if they made it. I just think the speed factor would still be there for me, even though sure it's not as quick as the automatic. I get it, but the fun factor would absolutely make up for it tenfold. And I think that's part of the value that you have to get out of a car like this, because a lot of the buyers who are getting into a car like this, they're going to want to feel nostalgic. Maybe they had a Z in a past life. Maybe they grew up and their parents had, an old Datsun or something of the sort, and they want to relive that experience. So those are things to take in consideration, and I think Nissan missed the mark on that. Now, when I talk about value per dollar, I'm not saying, does it come with ventilated seats? Does it have this? Does it have that? I'm talking the whole package, right? And when I say whole package, everybody's always going to compare it to the Supra because they're both, 50, 60 grand top trim. And everybody's going to be like, oh, the Supra is overpriced too. Sure, I get it. However, the Supra being, let's just be honest, mostly BMW, the build quality is going to be realistically a little bit better. And, the engine of choice, which is the B58, is a monster of a motor, right? It's made a name for itself. The 400Z has to at least match that in some capacity. The engine, not really, explored as much. It's not revered, as much as the B58. The build quality in the inside, I mean, it's better than the 370, but you got things like the same, shifter as a Sentra. You got the same door handles shared from the outgoing 370. And the infotainment system is, I don't know, cheap looking in my opinion. So is the gauge cluster, actually. The gauge cluster is digital, but it just, I don't know, it feels like an old 90s video game and not in a good way. So that begs the question, why did Nissan not try hard enough for the 400Z? And if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. If I'm not, just let me know your thoughts. I'm very curious to see what you guys think of the 400Z. And do you think Nissan can save it now that they're potentially merging with Honda? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below.